now start our webinar properly. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the final in our Law Week Lunch and the Law webinar series. My name is Natalie. I'm from the Community Legal Education team at Legal Aid New South Wales. Before I introduce our presenter and our interpreters, I would like to acknowledge that we are joining from Aboriginal land today, and you are all joining from Aboriginal land across the country. I am on Cammeraygal country today, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. And also because we are doing our education session, we acknowledge that Aboriginal people are the first and continuing educators and lawmakers on this land. So, welcome to our presenter, Matt, who's going to be talking about mobile phones and the law.
Hi,
And
Natalie.
hi, Matt. And we have Tyson and Jerry, who are our Auslan interpreters today. Like I said before, we encourage you to ask questions throughout using the Q&A. You can ask questions anonymously. We will do our best to answer those during the webinar. If we don't get to your questions, then we can try and answer your questions later, or you will also receive an email after the session with links to other information. If you're watching a recorded webinar today, then there should be links in the show notes on YouTube. All right. Before we start, as lawyers, we have to say that this is legal information only. If you need individual legal advice for your situation, then, as I said, we will be providing some information about where to go to get your own legal advice. So today we are talking about mobile phones and the law. It is a very big topic. We are going to be covering a few sections, as you can see today. So it is around driving, very important, recording conversations, and filming and being filmed, and also safety and tracking through mobile phones. So they're the areas we are talking about today. We have had a few questions in advance about some other areas. So we're not going to be able to have time to do too much around things like social media and the law, sexting, using your mobile phone in the workplace. We have had a few questions, but they're a bit broader than what we will be able to cover today. So they're the topics we're going to be trying to cover. Please do ask questions. And I will now hand over to Matt, who is an experienced criminal lawyer at Legal Aid New South Wales. He's joining us from a courthouse today. So
Yep.
welcome, Matt. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
So,
So do you want me
you,
to
yeah,
introduce the first topic? Yeah,
that'd be
so
great.
driving. We're talking about driving first. This is what we're going to be covering. The rules for using your mobile phone, if there are any exceptions. What are the rules if you're a P-plater, P1 or P2 drivers? And we've had question about, is there any difference in emergency situations? So to kick us off, Matt, can you do this?
You definitely cannot do that. And I think everybody would have already known the answer to that one. So you can't hold the phone for any other reason than to pass it to the passenger. We've had clients come to us with novel situations where they're passing it to the passenger while they're still having the conversation on the speakerphone. That's not that you can't do that other than to pick it up to pass it to the passenger. So perhaps they can answer it for you or turn it off. That's the only time that you can touch the phone. You're on mute still, Nat. Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Not at all.
Yes, so lots of other rules around driving as well. I'm going to now take us to the next slide. So what can you do when driving?
Okay, so it's really there's three things you can do. You can make or receive a phone call so long as you don't have to touch the phone, and so long as the phone is sitting in an approved or a manufactured phone holder. So something that you had to buy from the shops. You can play music, so you can use the phone to stream music to your car, but the golden rule again is that you can't touch the phone, not to change the song, not to flick between Spotify and Apple Play. And again, If it's anywhere else other than in an approved holder, it's no good. The last thing you can do is use it as a navigation device or use the maps function. But the golden rule again is you can't be touching the phone. So what this means practically is many new cars these days, well, I'm showing my age, probably some are older cars as well, uh, will allow you to link your phone to the car and then operate the phone via buttons on the steering wheel. That's okay because you're not touching the phone. So you can make and receive calls, change the music, use the maps functions if you can do that via the car's buttons and the like. It also means that if before you start your journey, you turn the music on and the map function on and type the address in and then drive off, it's okay while the phone sits there in the holder and streams the music to your stereo and shows you the map. You can't but midway through the trip decide you want to add a stop and start tapping the screen to type the new address in because that's using the phone. You can't touch the screen of the phone to change the music. You need to do that via the car's functionality. So you can do those two things, and the same goes for making a call. If the phone rings, you need to be able to answer it using the car's functionality or your voice, Alexa, or not Alexa, Apple answer the call, but you can't touch the phone. So golden rule, don't touch it unless you're passing it to the passenger.
Thank you. I'm listening very carefully to all these tips for myself as well. Um, and one other thing you can do if you're going to buy your fast food through a drive-through.
That's right. So they introduced more recently an exception because they realized we all like to tap our phone when we buy our McDonald's. Even now, the car park that I use in the city, if I drive, requires me to scan a QR code on my screen to get in and out. So I need to be able to hold the phone out the window to do those things. And there are exceptions, so long as that's the functionality that you're using. So to tap to pay or to tap or display the screen for entry into a car park or your unit complex or your work building or the like.
Okay. I'm going to ask you first about P platers, and then we have a couple of questions relevant to this section. So, what about P platers?
Okay, P platers, put the phone in the boot. You cannot use your phone at all. You can't set it up to um, stream the music and do things like that because using your phone at all if you're a P plater is contrary to the rules. So I say put it in the boot, but they do give P platers the exception for tapping to pay for things and for entry into buildings or parking spaces and things alike. Um, I've put a little note here for myself just to be safe, so you're not tempted to touch it. Put the phone in the boot, and when you get to Macca's, park and go in and purchase your food at the counter, because inevitably you will be tempted to touch it at some stage. You'll hear a ding of a message and you'll just want to quickly check who it's from. And that will be when the police officer on the motorbike rides up next to your window and sees you. We have lots of people coming through court all the time for being caught out just simply picking up the phone, not even doing the very obvious talking with it to your ear. But P platers, they're really on the lookout for anybody seen touching, holding, tapping the phone.
Yep. Okay, we've got a few questions which I think everyone would be interested in. So, just to clarify, when you mean while driving, if you're stopped at traffic lights, is that counted as being
It is.
stopped?
No,
So
that's
you're not,
not.
that's still driving.
That's still driving. The car has to be parked is the most simple way I can put it. I pulled over to the side of the road in park, best to have your handbrake on. But if you are out in the line of traffic doing anything at all, in terms of the vehicle being operated or about to be operated, then you can't be using your phone. That doesn't mean that if you're at the set of traffic lights, you quickly put the handbrake on, put it in park and turn it off. I think the police would probably take a dim view of that. So really the best way I can explain it is if you need to use the phone, you need to pull over and be parked.
Yep. But you can still have the engine running if necessary. Yep.
That's right. There's the law doesn't uh, prevent the car from being turned on, but if you are in any way having to be in control of whether the car moves again or not, that is the type of thing the law doesn't want you to be distracted from.
Mhm. One other question, if you've got, say, music playing on your phone in its proper carrier, but there's a video that goes along with that,
Yeah.
can you have a
Uh,
video playing?
No, so the law says the device or the phone can't be displaying a video. I know it's now increasingly difficult because my Spotify updated the other day and now it automatically plays some short 15-second clip in the background, but it Spotify has car mode which turns that off and just puts the song name and on the screen. So they've obviously thought ahead. But no, you can't have a video playing when it's visible to the driver because it's distracting.
Yeah.
Now, if your kids are in the back seat and want to watch YouTube on your phone, I mean, that's obviously okay because they're the ones holding the phone or using it. But those videos can be playing so long as the driver can't be distracted by it. So it couldn't be, for instance, mounted up in front of you on the dashboard pointing back to the kids because that video has an opportunity to distract the driver, and that's not lawful.
Okay, that is all very clear. Thank you. Okay, we're going to be moving to some examples, and I think you've mentioned several already, but just to clarify, what are the examples of what you can't do?
So you can't baseline rule. You can't hold your phone for any other reason than the reasons that the legislation specifies. Audio phone calls, not FaceTime, or anything, or WhatsApp video call, navigation, as long as it's in a holder, music playing, or tapping to pay. Uh, Picking up your phone for any other reason, check the weather, turn the volume up or down, just any other function that the phone performs, you can't hold the phone to do that. Um,
I found this, I guess TikTok could be from all over the world. And so, Matt, I'm going to ask you, people can see there's a picture on the screen of a mobile phone that someone's managed to attach to their car with something like looks like a plastic bag. Matt, is this genius?
Maybe genius, but not allowed.
Not allowed.
No,
Not not in New South Wales.
no, that's
Yep.
right. You need to be using a mobile phone holder that you've purchased from a shop that is manufactured to be a mobile phone holder. Now I know there might be some people who want to offer some grey areas there, like I can make one that's exactly the same. It's just not going to fly unless that you can demonstrate that the phone holder that you've purchased is manufactured as a phone holder, then you'll be in some strife. Now that doesn't mean the police are going around with a big list of authorized phone holders. They will use hopefully their common sense. And if it looks like a authorized phone holder, you shouldn't have too much dramas. But if it looks like that, I'd say they'd be wanting to ask you where you purchased it from and some evidence that it was manufactured to do that job.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to do a quick quiz. So if people want to play along and type yes or no into the chat, we'd be very happy to do that. Otherwise, Matt's going to go through the answers to this. So the first one, if my phone isn't in an approved mount, but I can control it via the steering wheel or radio controls, is that okay?
Okay, so the law says the phone has to be, if it's being used, has to be an approved mount. Okay. But if you can operate your phone via the controls in your car and your phone is, for instance, in your bag or in the boot, then that is okay because the phone is not
Oh,
distracting you. So the
yeah,
law allows it. But if the phone is going to be out and visible and in front of you, for lack of a better phrase, and doing one of the things like showing navigation or playing streaming music or being used to make phone calls, it needs to be in an approved mount.
using it. Okay. Yes, somebody did say yes. I'm going to put up the answers a bit later now. Sorry. Okay. I need my passenger to check something in my phone. Can I unlock it before I hand it to them?
Good question. The law says no, because unlocking the phone is using a function of the phone that's not authorized by law. That is the unlock function. So you couldn't unlock the phone because that would be use. You would have to pull over, um, put the car in park, unlock the phone, and then keep driving. The example or the purpose of the legislation allowing you to hand the phone to the passenger is again about distraction. So if the phone was ringing, you can pick it up and hand it to your passenger so they can use a function on the phone to stop that distraction, turn the volume down, hang it up, answer it if your phone allows it. I know some don't. But you can't do any other function on the phone other than simply hand it across.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm a P plater and I'm using my phone to stream music to my car. Is that okay?
No.
No.
People will say, well, what if it's in the boot and I've already turned it on and
Yeah.
set it up? Or you might sneakily get away with it. But if the police can establish that the phone is performing a function, then you are contrary to the law.
Okay.
So put your phone in the boot.
We've got a few people playing along with the quiz and they're getting it all right so far. So that's good. Okay, last question. This is something we haven't covered. I saw a police officer on his phone while driving. Should I film him and then make a complaint so he gets a fine?
Okay, so two parts to this question. If you're driving and filming him, then you're likely to be the one that gets the ticket, I would say. And if you then took it into a police station and showed them that you were using your phone while driving, that person would probably give you a ticket. The police have a broad exception in the road rules that say they are exempt so long as they are driving a police vehicle and they are essentially, well, I mean, that's really where it stops. It's interpreted as they need to be using the phone for part of their duty, but it's not written in the law like that. It just simply says that they are exempt from the rules if they are in a police vehicle. And there's probably many arguments for and against why they should have exceptions like that, but probably not the forum for it. But I would suggest you don't film them. And even if you were standing on the footpath doing it, not committing an offence yourself, it's unfortunately probably not going to go too far because of that exception they have.
Yep, so we've got that's not a good idea.
Yeah, not a good idea.
All right, thanks, Matt. So that wraps up our section on mobile phones and driving. There are a couple of questions. I'm just going to quickly, it's a bit of a, I guess, summary of what we've been talking about. So just to clarify, if somebody's purchased a mobile phone holder, but it's purchased online from overseas, that should be okay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as long as it is a mobile phone holder. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. And just to clarify, P platers can't use a navigation app or map
No,
on their
can't.
phone at
No,
all
not at all. Can't
when they're
use their
driving.
phone at all. Yeah, that's right.
So they'd need to use inbuilt
Yeah, well,
GPS
either
or whatever in the
a
car.
nav man, I don't even know if they make them
Oh,
anymore, or an inbuilt GPS for the car.
okay.
I think, did you want, we mentioned emergency situations before, and I'm not sure if I
Yes.
covered it. I might have skipped over it. So there isn't any what we call statutory defences or statutory allowances. That means there's nothing written into the law that excuses phone use in an emergency situation. If I can give you an example of where that sort of thing exists in the law, if in an emergency you can establish that you parked in a no stopping zone because you needed to quickly jump out and tend to a medical emergency or a passenger with a medical emergency, or your car broke down, you can't be held responsible. But there's no exception under the mobile phone provisions that allows it at all. So you couldn't say the reason I was on my phone was because of an emergency. It would really come down to the discretion of the police officer. But what you have to remember is the mobile phone rules are there to stop distractions, to stop the next emergency happening, which is the crash that inevitably happens because you're talking on the phone. So my best advice to that question was you need to pull over to use the phone for the emergency situation. But again, it would probably be a matter of discretion, but I wouldn't recommend it because truly so many accidents happen because of phone use. That's the reason the law's there.
Okay. Thanks, Matt. I think that was really practical and helpful for a lot of people. So we're going to move on now to another common question we get about mobile phones, which is around recording conversations. So in this section, we're going to be talking about what the rules are around that and when we talk and what we mean by your lawful interest. So that will explain that soon. So I've got a little scenario here, Matt. I'll ask you. Let's say this group are having a like committee meeting or strata meeting or something like that.
Yep.
Can one of those people just record the conversation?
Okay, so I'll caveat this by saying I'm going to address the law in New South Wales, and the
Oh,
law
yep, yep.
in each state, frustratingly, for so many laws is different. And so this doesn't apply in every state. You mentioned before someone was here from South Australia. I haven't looked at the South Australian law, so I don't know what the law is there. I had a quick look at Queensland just to provide an example later. So this is New South Wales law. In New South Wales, in that committee meeting scenario, you can record the conversations so long as everybody consents. Now, it can be an implied consent, or it can be a direct consent. So uh, in the law, an implied consent means it's obvious to the other people that it's happening and they don't object or walk away or tell you to stop. Um, and so if the person in that meeting, someone said, look, I'm meant to take the minutes, but I'm a slow writer, I'm going to record it and type them up later, and everybody said, that's fine, Bill, then Bill can record the conversation. That's the first exception to the rule, which says you can't record private conversations at all. The law in this scenario starts very broad and bans it completely and then says, unless you're doing certain things or you have met certain criteria. So in that situation, it's okay.
Okay, so I've just put the slide up on the
Oh, yep.
screen to
Okay.
summarize that.
Great. So we've covered the first one. Everybody in that meeting consents. The second exception is if you're making the recording and not asking the other party's consent to protect your lawful interests. Now, lawful interests is a term that has had to be defined or clarified by decision making in courts as to what amounts to a lawful interest. The examples that I can give you that are settled law, for lack of a better phrase, are in domestic violence types situations. There have been a number of decisions that have allowed in the recordings of the victim where they have not sought consent to record interactions between themselves and the offender, and when the offender has tried to have them excluded as an unlawful recording. In those situations where there was evidence that previously evidence of the domestic violence wasn't able to be obtained without it being obtained in a covert way, the court said, well, that person they were protecting their lawful interest by making that recording. They thought they had to do it. And it has to be genuine and reasonable belief that you have to do it. The other example is in business dealings. So there is authority that says where contracts have been breached in the past and the suffering party or the harmed party hasn't been able to prove it because it's what we call in law a parole type contract, which is a verbal contract, then those people who have in future recorded the business meetings covertly in order not to put the other party on notice and has then relied on it later to establish something was said or agreed, that's been found to be okay. Now that example there is, and the domestic violence example needs to be coupled in with the last of the defences or exceptions, which is that there wasn't any other you were not going to play the recording for another person for any other reason. So if you were making a recording for your own benefit only, not to be played to another person, then that's okay. And if you couple that in with, well, I wouldn't have played it to anybody but for the fact that I had to protect my lawful interests and show it to a court to prove something was said or play it to my lawyer, then that would be okay because those two exceptions join together. So you weren't recording it for any other reason and you only then played it for somebody else when you needed to use it to protect your lawful interests.
Okay, great. Now, thinking about someone from the other side, if somebody thinks they are being recorded
Okay, so
and don't want to be, yep.
right. You should immediately, if you think you're being recorded, tell the person, I do not consent to this private conversation being recorded. Now, that won't protect you if later it is found the person had an exception, that is, they were protecting their lawful interests. So if you are really concerned that you're being recorded and you don't want to be, then unfortunately you will have to stop the conversation because there's nothing you can say or do that will indefinitely exclude that recording from being played or used later. So similarly, sometimes when you ring phone call centers or large companies and they say, we're going to record your conversation for training purposes, you have the right to say, I don't want the call recorded. That accords with the rules because they're asking you for consent it's implied if you keep talking or you keep participating in the conversation without saying "don't record me." But if you don't want to be recorded and they have, for instance, some internal rule that says we have to record all our calls, we have no choice. They've told you they're recording. There's nothing to compel them to stop. And so really you just have to stop your involvement in the conversation.
Okay. We do have some questions, but the questions might be answered in our quiz. So I will go to the quiz now. This is about recording. Again, I'll ask the questions and then people can play along if they like. So, can I record a conversation just in case the other person says something a bit dodgy?
Okay, that would not be enough to qualify later or to excuse you from committing an offence. So no, there you must have genuine reasons to think that you need to protect your lawful interest. And so, yes, it is something that comes later, but if your mindset at the time is, well, I just don't know if I trust this person, so I'm going to secretly record this conversation, then you're committing an offence. And so I should probably make clear as well, it's not just about the recording being unlawful and not able to be used, it's an offence to make the recording. So there's two parts. So long as you can establish that you have one of the statutory exceptions, not only can you then defend a charge of an allegation that you unlawfully recorded the conversation, but you can also then potentially use it in legal proceedings. But if you don't meet the exception, not only can you not use it, so you get to court and you stand up and say, I have a recording of that conversation that I made that he doesn't know about, not only would the court say, well, it's not admissible because you don't meet the exception, but you would probably find the police would turn up at your door a few days later and say, we heard you've made a private recording, here's a court attendance notice. So it's a double banger.
Yep, very good to know. What about this scenario? So I was recording a TikTok in a restaurant, and when I replayed it before posting, I realized you can hear a conversation in the background. Is that committing a crime?
Okay, so there is an exception in the legislation that is inadvertent or inadvertent and unintentional capturing of private conversations that are happening nearby to the conversation that you're recording. So yes, overhearing the recording, overhearing something else happening is not an offence.
Okay.
Now, you couldn't spin that by going and recording a TikTok very close to a conversation that you have some interest in and say, well, the fact that I could hear it was just the background of my TikTok. I wasn't recording the conversation, even though I have some interest in the conversation. It is genuinely that if somebody came to you later and said, I'm going to the police, you just recorded my private conversation with my friend without our permission, you could say it was unintentional. I have no interest in your conversation. I wasn't intentionally recording your conversation. So you can't spin that exception. It needs to be genuinely unintentionally overheard.
Okay, thank you. Next one. This is something people might have seen on TV sometimes. Can journalists use hidden cameras and recording devices to catch, for example, shonky tradespeople?
Okay, so it's interesting, and I think the questions frame journalists so that we don't fall into the lawful interest defence or exception. Um, in New South Wales, no, because we have two-party consent is a colloquial term that people use, or it's all parties consent. So all parties to the private conversation have to consent to the recording. Now, in other states, for instance, in Queensland, I understand that they don't have all party consent, which means most of those current affair shows where they're secretly or discreetly recording the people they chase down the street, they're not necessarily breaching their laws. But in New South Wales, a journalist couldn't be said to be protecting their own lawful interests by recording a dodgy tradesperson who they think might be ripping them off. It might be different if you are trying to record the dodgy tradesman to protect your lawful interests. So a very basic example, not legal advice, just legal information. If you were being charged by the hour for work and you thought that perhaps the work wasn't being done and you wanted to record whether the work was being done, that could act as an exception. But again, it's not so you can then go and play it to all and sundry or all of your friends that weekend and say, what do you think about this? Because The exceptions are that you're not recording it to broadcast to anybody else other than for the purpose of protecting your lawful interests. And really, that would be to then play it to a lawyer or to a court or something like that. You can't just, again, going back to number one, start recording everybody that comes into your house just in case they do something wrong.
Thank you. Okay, this is something everyone, well, not everyone, but lots of people might have experienced. I think my phone is listening to me. Last night I spoke to my partner about a holiday to Bali, and now I'm being bombarded with Bali resort advertisements. Is that illegal?
Uh, your phone is definitely listening to you. So is your Alexa, you're probably your TV, and soon your fridge. Or I think some of them listen to you, the fridge listens to you. You will find that you have consented somewhere to the recording of your voice or your conversations that are happening in this fine print of the manual when you purchased it, some QR code that they tell you need to scan and read numerous pages of legal jargon, you will find that you've consented somewhere. If you want to go looking for it and you find it and you don't consent, then you're going to have to go buy another phone, because I don't think there's any way of stopping the onslaught of Apple and the like listening into our every part of
Right.
our lives.
Yeah. All right. So that's covers recording. I've just got one question about recording before we move on to more like filming in public. Someone's saying, can you use, like, if you're in a classroom and you need an interpretation app, which does have an auto save function, so you're basically recording the presenter. Is that allowed?
Okay, so the legislation talks about a private conversation. So if you're in a lecture that is not a private conversation between one or more people, and you record it, you might be infringing particular bylaws or rules that university or that organization has. But if you're not recording, the law is around recording private conversations. So in that scenario, if you're using an app to interpret that then transcribes or records, and it is a otherwise publicly available, I know unis aren't public, but you get what I mean. Um, lecture that's being given, then you wouldn't necessarily infringe the Surveillance Devices Act, but you might infringe other laws, which I can't advise on at short notice, which talk about copyright. The lecture could be there could be a copyright issue, or they could have bylaws at the uni that you're breaching. So in terms of what I'm talking about today, specifically the Surveillance Devices Act and the offences under Section 7, that wouldn't infringe that section.
Great. Thank you for clarifying. Okay, we've got a lot of questions about filming. So we're going to move on to this next section, which is around filming in public. So what we're going to be talking about in this section is what the law is, um, your privacy, when you can object to being filmed, and also a bit about police. We get questions about, can police look at your phone or take your phone? So to get us started, Matt, can I film people in public without their permission?
Yes, you can film in public, in almost all public places, without the permission of the people around you. Now, we'll just quickly touch back on recording. If you are interested in a conversation two people are having and you go and video record on your phone close to them, you're not committing an offence by recording in public. But if your audio is capturing their private conversation without their consent, you might be falling back into a breach of that law. But generally, filming or photographing in public, there is an applied understanding that you may be filmed or photographed, and that's not against the law. There are some limited um, not exception, sorry, there are some limited times when it is against the law in what are public places, but public places that people can expect to be afforded privacy. So change rooms, bathrooms. Arguably, um, people who choose to go to clothes-free beaches also might expect that they are not going to be filmed, or certain parts of their body aren't going to be filmed. That is probably a contentious part of the law, because there are different rules around filming people's private parts that don't make the filming in public unlawful, but make the content of the recording unlawful under a different law, which we're not covering today. But certainly what we're covering today says if a person is entitled to expect privacy, then you can't film them in that situation.
Yeah. So the slide I've got up now is, I guess, what happens if you are being filmed in public? Can you stop someone doing that?
You can ask someone to stop. They don't have to. Again, like the recording scenario, you just need to walk away. Telling somebody, I don't consent to being recorded is fine, but it doesn't mean they have to stop. And different if they are going to publish later the recording, which is why TV stations come up to you and ask you for your details and say, can we put you on the news tonight? But that's a whole different area. Generally, if there is a tourist, for example, filming the Opera House and spanning their phone around along the crowd, you couldn't walk up and say, delete that. I refuse to appear in your holiday video. Uh, I can see on the slide as well, we included that there are some other laws that prevent obstruction to pedestrians and traffic. And I guess I'll just quickly touch on that. Like not being able to film in private areas, if you are filming and you are causing obstruction to pedestrian flow or traffic flow, you're not committing an offence for doing the filming, but you might be committing other public order type offences, which the police or other people could take action against you for.
So if that tourist at the Opera House you were talking about wants to put their video on YouTube, do they have to blur out other people's faces?
No, there's no requirement for them to do that.
Okay. All right. Again, I think an excellent summary of filming in public. We're just going to go now to some issues around police. So I guess there's a couple of different scenarios we're talking about now. The first is, I guess, if somebody sees something happening in the street and films a crime, an assault or something taking place, can the police then take your phone as evidence?
Okay. No, the police can't just take your phone off you unless the phone has been involved or they suspect the phone has been involved in the offence. So the fact that your phone captures an offence happening does not mean your phone is now being used in or connected to the offence. They would need to, just like if a CCTV camera on the side of a building captures an offence, they would need to first simply ask you or the company or the building manager, can we have a copy of that? And you can freely give it to them. Or if you say, no, I don't want to give it to you, then they might issue a subpoena if there are court proceedings, or they could get a search warrant to search for things. But again, the search warrant would require them to link the recording or the device used for recording to the offence. So probably not an area that they can go down, but they certainly could subpoena the information from you. But the answer simply to the question is, can they just simply come up and say, did you record that on your phone? We'll hand over your phone. There isn't a power that allows them to do that.
Okay. And the second part, that's basically the same response, isn't it?
Yeah, really. What I would suggest, if I can give some advice, if the police think the evidence that's on your phone is important enough, there is always the risk, unfortunately, that they will act first and worry about consequences later. It happens all too often. So to avoid that, if you really have no objection to them having the footage that you've recorded, um, you can simply say to the police officer, what's your police email address? Doesn't identify them. They can give you a number. They all have a number at police, and you can simply email it to them. And that's all they need from you. If they say something like, we suspect there's more evidence in your phone that you're not showing us, then that's a whole different story. And at that stage, you can say, well, you can't have my phone unless you want to issue a subpoena for it. Then unfortunately, you might have to go get some legal advice rather than this legal information.
Yeah. So the situation, if police think that your phone's been used in some criminal matter, that's a completely different
Completely
story.
different
Yeah.
story. If the police come around and say, we think your phone was used to do a part of that or to facilitate a part of a crime that happened, then there is a chance that if you are standing in public, they can search you
Mhm.
and take it because it's evidence. Or then they could get a warrant and come and knock on your door and say, we want your phone. But the phone itself needs to have been used to facilitate somehow some involvement in the offence, not just capture a recording of it, an offence you otherwise have absolutely no connection with.
Okay. All right, thank you. There are no further questions about filming. Then we're going to move on to, I guess, another thing phones can be used for is things like tracking other people or being tracked. So in this situation, Matt, if this person is not just simply looking at a map, but if they are checking where their partner is that allowed?
So the law, similar to recording conversations, covers every base first and says no. You just can't install or use a device that tracks a person's location without their consent. The first answer in every case is unless the person consents to being tracked, then no. The examples to consent to being tracked are when you get into a cab and it says on the window on a sticker, this cab has GPS surveillance on it, you're consenting by getting in. If you hire a car and there's a big sticker on the windscreen above your head that says, we use tracking to make sure you're not doing 200 kilometers an hour down the freeway, you're consenting to being tracked. If your phone is tracking your location as it is all the time, and somebody figures out how to log into your, Gmail account or your Apple account and see where you are, and they haven't told you they're doing that, then that's unlawful.
Yeah.
On the slide I see as well, we mentioned the new laws that are in force now, coercive control. It's a broad term. It's not exactly how the law speaks about it technically, but it is true that continued tracking of a person could, one, infringe the law that says you can't stalk a person. There is a specific offence for stalking, and that is attending or tracking a person's location. And also, over an extended period of time, if it causes that person to change their behavior or to feel a certain way about things they can and can't do, then that could extend to being considered coercive control.
All right. Um, Thank you, Matt. We're going to do another quick quiz on tracking, just to summarize what we've been talking about. Again, feel free to play along in the Q&A. So question one, my partner and I know each other's passwords. I'm getting suspicious they might be cheating on me. Can I log into their email and check if they are talking to someone else?
Okay. So the answer to that would be no. Just because you can access or you know how to access someone's private electronic data does not mean that you just have open permission to do that. So particularly where the intention is because you want to discreetly check on where they are or where they've been or what they're doing. So the answer to that would be no. I don't want to scare everybody that has me and my partner. We have each other's banking login, and that is so that we can easily and swiftly move money around and we don't message or text each other every time we do it. But there's no nefarious
Mm.
purpose behind doing that. If I logged into his bank and took some money and in circumstances where it had been made clear that we weren't on that type of arrangement anymore, then it would start to be unlawful. So it's okay to have joint passwords for accounts, but as soon as you start using the access, or perhaps I can put it this way, if you went to the person and said, can I check your emails to see if you're cheating on me? If their answer is likely to be no, absolutely not, then you need to assume that that would be an unlawful access.
Yeah. I guess it's similar to my kids and the Find My Phone app, so I can see where they are for their
Yep,
safety.
absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, completely non-nefarious purpose. But if you took my nieces and nephews wear these watches that have got GPS on them, and so that my sister can call them and speak to them. If she decided that slip that into her husband's lunch bag just to make sure he's going to work every day and not the pub, then that would be unlawful.
Yeah. And on the that question of tracking my kids, like they know about it, but is there a particular age where you ask for consent or
No, well, there's
it's
not
just
really.
general?
Arguably, your 5-year-old could say, Mum, I don't consent to you tracking my location. And you would probably have to stop. But there's other laws talking about lawful correction and things that parents can do with kids that aren't against the law because you're acting for their safety. And I'd say they'd probably struggle to find a lawyer that would take them on or afford.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. Next. Okay. On a similar note, my car has an inbuilt GPS. Can I log into the app to see where my car is at any time? I didn't install an AirTag or tracking device. Is it okay to track where my car is when someone else is using it?
Only if they know that the functionality is there and then they continue to use your car despite that, that could be an implied consent. So if you're going to lend your car to somebody and you have the ability to log into your phone and have a look at it and you don't tell them that you can do that, then no, you can't secretly check on their location. But if you say to the person, yeah, you can borrow my car, but I just want to let you know my car sends me a message if it goes over a certain speed, or my car sends me a message if we leave the doors unlocked. I mean, that's not tracking, but I have the ability to see where it is. You would have to say to the person, I can track where the car is just so you know. And if they then say that's fine or say nothing but continue to use your car, you could argue that they've by implication consented. But no, you can't um, use a tracking device. So the law says install or use or maintain. That means replace batteries. So just because you didn't install it doesn't mean you can then still use it, because use is a separate part of the law that's prohibited.
We do have a few questions on the tracking and stalking. So, how can I tell if my phone is being tracked?
Okay, I I just Googled and you put up the e-safety commissioner website, and I asked my friend who works for one of the big phone companies and is quite techie, and they said if you go into or go up to one of the phone repair kiosks, so those people that do know the ins and outs of phones, they will generally be able to look in the background of the processes of the phone and be able to tell if your location functionality is being activated and what applications are activating it. So my advice would be, if you think it's being tracked, I would take it to somebody and ask them, somebody that knows how to check if something in your phone, an application or a website is accessing your location data. And I'm told it's not that difficult to work out if you know where to look. I couldn't find it quickly on Google, but I'm not super techy. So, but I'm sure some other people would be, some of maybe our younger nieces and nephews would work
Okay.
it out pretty quick.
Yeah. But no, a really important issue. And I think there's, yeah, a lot of people are asking if they're just tracking their child or gave their phone to someone else inadvertently. It doesn't have that nefarious intent that you were
That's right.
talking about. It's generally
Yeah.
okay, but there is that really serious case of technology facilitated abuse that we're talking about here, and there is
Yeah.
help available for that.
That's right. That's right. And one thing that I learned when I was Googling is that, particularly with Apple AirTags, because they're very discreet, easily accessible, easy to buy. I found that all Apple phones, and you can get an application for your Android and other types of phones. There is an application that will tell you if it detects an AirTag following you around. So it doesn't tell you every time you walk past a person on the street with an AirTag on their bag or their keys or whatever they're actually genuinely using it for. But if somebody put an AirTag in your car, say discreetly, um, the application will realize, hang on, this AirTag's moving everywhere that you're moving and you haven't registered it with me or logged it. And it will tell you AirTag serial number 567 has
Mm.
been following you, and it shows you a map. And so, in terms of protecting yourself, that is probably a good way. I think the Apple phones might do it by automatically, but maybe you have to turn on some functionality. Other eBay, Temu trackers that you can buy probably, I mean, I'm not sure, probably don't work the same way, but perhaps they do. But that would be something that I would recommend if people are concerned. Maybe have a look for apps and functionalities like that.
So I think I mentioned you will get an email tomorrow that will have some links to all the information that we've been talking about today and some links to investigate a bit further, such as the e-safety commissioner website. So Matt, that does bring us to the end of the content. I'll just show you this slide, which is where to go if you've got those questions about your own situation and you want to get some personal sort of legal information. You can contact Law Access New South Wales. It's 1300 888 529. There's also a chat function to speak to a live person with your questions. That's on the Legal Aid New South Wales website. And if you want to scan the QR code on the screen, then you can go straight to that website. There are also community legal centres, which are our partners in this Law Week webinar, and they can also help you with legal information about many of these issues. Our other Law Week partners are the libraries, and they have a Find Legal Answers toolkit, which has something called the Law Handbook in it and other resources that will also have more information. So they are some places you can go for more information, as well as the email that you will get tomorrow. So thanks so much, Matt. That was amazing and really helpful. I
No
might just
problems.
run through a few of the questions that we've got that we haven't had a chance to get to. And if anyone else has other questions, please put those in the Q&A. I think we have answered most questions as we go. Just some clarification back to driving. When we were talking about P plates, that applies to both what what we call P1 and P2, or the red and the green Ps.
Yep,
It's all of that.
all of that. Yep,
Yep.
that's right.
So it's same thing, all the
Yep.
P plates. Okay. Um, I think you have covered all of the, oh yeah. I'm not going to admit anything I've done in a car, but this question is, if you've got a mobile phone inside your car and you're listening to a Zoom or a Teams meeting while driving, but you're not watching, is that
Au-
allowed?
Audio is fine so long as the video isn't in a position to distract the driver. So if you can listen to the audio and have the screen off, or put it in your bag so it's very obvious that you're not watching the video, or put it on the back seat. As long as the video isn't playing in a position to distract you, then it would be okay. I wouldn't try my chances telling the police officer that comes up to the window, I promised I didn't look at it, because they would probably just give you the ticket. So, yep, that's fine. Audio only, no videos.
And someone's asking about that very, very difficult issue of being tracked or stalked through your devices and having like an Apple phone, your Apple ID
Yep,
connected to lots of different things. I think in that, do what Matt suggests, to contact someone at a phone kind of kiosk, helpful person there, or that
yep,
there's a lot of information on the like e-safety commissioner about
yeah.
your phone being tracked.
And if this is in a domestic situation, the Women's Domestic Violence Advocacy Service operate at not every quarter in New South Wales, but they're in a lot of places. You'll find links to them on the Legal Aid website. They have lots of referral services that can assist with technology related issues. So that would perhaps be a good starting point. They can't help you themselves, but I know they have a lot of resources to assist people in those sort of situations. So perhaps touch base with them, or your community legal centre as well generally has a number of referral services that can assist in those sort of situations.
Yeah, that's an excellent suggestion. And Legal Aid also has a specific domestic violence unit that can help if you're concerned about your safety in this technology facilitated abuse, then you can contact them definitely. I don't think we have any other questions, so we are going to wrap this up 5 minutes early. I think Matt, you might be happy with that if you have to get back to
Back
court.
back to court. Yep.
Court. All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was excellent. I really learned a lot for my own purposes as well. So
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thanks, Tyson and Jerry. Thank you, everyone. We'd love to get your feedback on this webinar. I think a survey will pop up, so please give your feedback. And that wraps up Law Week. So happy Law Week, everyone, and thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks,
See you
everyone.
next
See you
year.
later.
Bye.
Bye bye.